Welcome into the NBA Every Game on the Board podcast. We got August 3rd, Teddy. You're here, I'm here, and we're breaking down each and every game on the NBA card. Welcome in, buddy. Happy Monday morning.
Hey, it's great to be here. And look, I'm looking forward to doing NFL opening line reports. That's where this show began. I would anticipate before the end of the month we'll have something to talk about. But right now, with no preseason games and with the NFL lines relatively stale, let's keep our attention on the sports that are going right now. I thought NBA would be wholly appropriate for today. So, like you said, we're going to go through all 6 games on the card for today, including the one that tips off in just over half an hour. And then we'll take a quick look ahead at tomorrow's games. I'll give you my point spreads for those games. We'll see what the markets do when the numbers come up later today.
Sure, Teddy. Good breakdown there. We got Black Stars, Elliot, Abel in the house. Actually, Abel's a little off on one of his comments saying he's not interested because we're not breaking down the games. Well, actually, Abel, it's all about breaking down the games today. And we're starting off with a game that that tips off here in about 30 minutes, Teddy. 1:30 Eastern time. We got Toronto at Miami. If you're following along at home, guys, going by rotation order, top of the card down to the bottom of the card, 739, 740 here. Toronto versus Miami. 221 being the total, -2 in the hook, pretty much -3, I'll say, Teddy, pretty much across the board here with the Raptors laying against the Heat.
Yeah, I mean, the clients and I cashed a pretty easy winner with Miami in their restart debut. They were playing Denver, and I thought Denver was a strong bet against in that game, and they were. All that said, the Heat looked pretty darn good, certainly in the second half on both ends of the floor. There was some concern yesterday when Jimmy Butler missed practice. It was supposedly an excused absence. There were some concerns about what was going on, whether Butler had left the bubble or something like that. It turned out that was all rumor. Butler's playing today. Everything, in theory, is supposed to be fine, although I did see a couple of quotes from Heat players that when Butler's status was questionable today, that did concern me a little bit. But let's talk about broader strategies right now with this little 8-game mini season restart for the NBA. And number one thing I'm looking to bet on teams that are playing defense. All right. That's what we've seen. We've seen a pretty sharp dichotomy between the teams that can get stops during crunch time and the teams that can't. Well, we know what Toronto can do. All right, they have championship level defense. They certainly did it in their debut out of the gate. They shut down the Lakers in that ball game. I mean, it was impressive defensive performance from the Raptors. And I mean, admittedly, Lakers weren't in good form, but they held them to 35% shooting, 25% from beyond the arc. They won the battle of the glass. They forced turnovers. They were able to win the game going away, despite the fact they didn't shoot particularly well. You know, it wasn't a game that the Raptors were. They shot 42% from the floor. You know, it wasn't one of these days where everything's falling for Toronto. Lowry and Van Vliet played well, but the rest of the team, there wasn't anyone that really stood out in that regard. So the Raptors have a better game in than the one we just saw. I'm not convinced Miami does, but I'm also not in a rush to bet against a Heat team that came into the bubble as something of an undervalued commodity and may well still be an undervalued commodity right now. So not a game I'm going to be involved with from a side standpoint. From a total standpoint, look, these are two teams that are capable of playing defense. We have a Lakers team that has remade their backcourt and needs to get guys, acclimated to each other and what they're doing on the floor against a good defensive team that may not be easy. We saw yesterday a whole bunch of unders cash with some really high totals, even in a day where the second lowest scoring game of the day was 228 points. It was still a day for unders. This one at 221 right now in that range. I wouldn't bet it over. I'll put it that way.
All right, good start there, Teddy. We got 741, 742 up next, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific tip here. Indiana versus Washington. We're seeing the Pacers -8 in the hook, -8 depending where you're shopping, 227.5 to 228.5 being the total, Teddy.
So coming into the restart, after watching the Wizards play their scrimmages, I'm like, hey, this team is feisty. They're competitive. Scott Brooks is got them playing hard. Even without any semblance of star power, I think Washington has the potential to be a live underdog in some of these games. And I bet them the first game. I bet them at +7 against Phoenix. I didn't think the Suns should be laying that. And the Wizards had no defensive answers in that ball game, none whatsoever. So I didn't play them yesterday against Brooklyn. And for the first 3 quarters of that game, I'm like, oh my God, I should have been on the Wiz. Why wasn't I on the Wiz? You know how we are. You are. We're all the same in that regard.
All sports bettors know that feeling.
Yeah. And then in the fourth quarter, when push came to shove, as I'm watching the game, I'm like, this is exactly why you didn't bet Washington. Okay. And it was. The Wizards, when it came to crunch time, the Nets had go-to offensive players. The Wizards didn't. Shabazz Napier had a terrible game yesterday. And when you're struggling at the point, Ish Smith coming off the bench was a little bit better, but, now you're on the second of back-to-backs with a couple of second-tier point guards, a team that doesn't play any defense, and a team that really doesn't have that much to play for. The betting markets are reacting accordingly. However, so you say, oh, it's easy to take Indiana here. I mean, Indiana's a blowout central, The Pacers are coming off a pretty dominant ball game. Used as a free play. Certainly down the stretch in the fourth quarter. Remember, they trailed by double digits. They trailed by around 10 to the Sixers in the fourth and just made every shot down the stretch. TJ Warren certainly had a big game, but it wasn't only him. That Indiana did a lot of things well in that contest. But this is a whole different animal here when we're talking about, oh, well, we're a 6-point dog. No, now we're 8.5 point favorites. You got to win this game by double digits. Got to be. And the one thing with the Wiz, I mean, their effort's been there. Even if they're down 20, I'm not expecting Washington to lay down, and there could be room for a run late, as we've seen repeatedly. I mean, what did we see yesterday? How many double-digit comebacks throughout the course of the day? Numerous. I mean, we've seen plenty of those. But, we saw, obviously, Portland rally back against Boston and make that game really interesting. We saw Memphis rally against San Antonio late. We saw Milwaukee blow a late lead against Houston. We saw Sacramento. And again, Orlando was so in control of that game. Sacramento outscored them by 19 in the fourth quarter of that contest. For the worst, we saw Dallas blow a lead to Phoenix. So we're seeing clearly teams with the lead taking taking a breath, exhaling a little bit, and the teams that are down fighting hard. That's been consistent throughout the return to the NBA and here in the bubble. So I guess to make a short story long, I'm not excited about laying 8.5 points right now. There's got to be a real good reason to me to get involved with the favorite. Other than that, I don't like the dog. And it's not a situation where I'm seeing enough for Indiana that I'm willing to pull the trigger. So I have reassessed my opinion about Washington. Maybe they end up being a value team. This point spread is certainly saying there's plenty of value on the Wiz, but the first 2 games have shown me enough from Washington that they're a difficult team to trust unless it is an inflated point spread range, because both defensively and offensively, the Wizards have their fair share of issues. The only question here, for me at least, is whether you want to lay this type of price with Indiana. Personally, I don't.
Teddy, we got a question here in the chat box from Jared. He'd like to hear your thoughts on the Pacers first half -4.
It makes sense, certainly with Washington on the second of back-to-backs, coming off a game. Yeah, they were competitive yesterday. And they were not in control of the game, but they were certainly in position to win until the latter stages of the fourth quarter. So the concept of them being a step slow today early on, I wouldn't have talked you out of it. If I was going to play a first half wager, it would be the Pacers minus the spot.
Okay. And Teddy, what about when you were talking about, double teams down by double digits coming back, and it's kind of been a theme here. Do you think that's something attributed here towards the bubble and the restart, or is this just kind of by happen chance?
I think there's something to do with it being absolutely them being on the restart. Look, okay, if you're in the middle of March, okay, and you've played all these games and you're down by 20, and all right, we'll come back and get them the next time.
Right.
When you've been sitting around for 4 months and you're down 20 and you got 8 games to get your act together, the sense of urgency is a little bit greater, and we've seen that definitely from the team that are trailing. And then you have the other element of the equation, which is when a team has been playing with big leads and taking runs and then, pushing back against the runs and staying in control of the game, they have that in their muscle memory. All right. Mm-hmm. When it's 4 months without that, some of that is lost, and the exhales and the runs tend to be a little bit longer. We've definitely seen that, where the team's punching and the other team's not punching back for a while, and the other team finally punches back, and the first team isn't punching anymore. So I think it's both ends of the equation. The teams with the leads are exhaling a little bit too much. They're out of practice. The teams that have fallen behind, there's a sense of urgency that there might not be there in a normal regular season game. So both of them play into the comebacks theme of the first weekend of NBA action. We'll see if that holds sway for the entirety of the bubble. But right now, if you're betting in game, the only thing you want is a team that's down 20.
Okay. Well, in Sabino in the chat box, he's saying, he caught plus 20 in 3 games and ended up winning them. I mean, that's something that you're really recommending then, huh?
Absolutely. For in-game wagering, you want the team that's getting killed because we are seeing the swings.
Okay.
That said, with the Wizards on the second of back-to-backs, I know they fought. This game is a clear path for me. I'm not laying this price with Indiana. And I think I've learned my lesson with Washington. I'd love to see Washington lose one more, get smacked around here. Maybe we catch them double digits next time out. And that might be a play worth making.
Absolutely. Big dog that hasn't quit for sure is usually a good bet here. We got 743, 744 up next. Same time, 7 p.m. Eastern tip. Denver versus Oklahoma City. OKC -6 in the hook, 220 being the total, Teddy.
I got 4:05 start on Indiana, Washington, and Denver, OKC. Are you sure about these 7 o'clock starts?
7 o'clock Eastern, but we're using Pacific time, Teddy.
No. I'm looking at 1 o'clock start Pacific time.
Oh, I got it wrong. Okay.
Let me double check that, but I'm almost sure that we have.
I think you're right, Teddy. You're right. I read it wrong. 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific. My bad, man.
That's all right. If it's the worst mistake you ever make, we'll live through it.
All right.
But yeah, so Toronto, Miami tips off in 20 minutes, and then Indiana, Washington, and Denver, OKC both tip off 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock at Eastern time. Let's talk about the Thunder. Let's talk about the Nuggets. The Nuggets are a super interesting team today. Here's a quote, and I want to get the quote. This is a quote that when I was betting against Denver in their first game, stood out to me. This is from Mike Malone. Quote, "Right now, to be honest, I'm not concerned about our seeding. Number one concern is health. That continues to be a huge concern for me, a huge point of emphasis. Can we find a way to get healthy come August 17th when the postseason begins? I have no idea who will be available on Saturday at 1 o'clock against Miami because it seems like every day there's a change in the availability of certain players." That was, I thought, a pretty strong bet against quote.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Turned out to be a pretty strong bet against quote. After the game, Mike Malone wasn't unhappy. He was freaking furious. He was furious with the effort. And yeah, they got blown out in the second half. They're playing without their top 3 guards right now. It is definitely a concern for the Nuggets when it comes to backcourt play. No Barton, no Harris, no Jamal Murray. I'm seeing as a question mark. I don't think he's going to play today. And the markets have reacted accordingly. When you're talking about a team playing without their top 3 guards, they've been playing these crazy tall ball lineups. You can make a case. This is a Denver team, given that first quote where they could care less about seeding, given their injury issues, given what we say, we're looking for teams that play defense. OKC had a great defensive effort in their first game back. They've been overachievers all year long, and that really hasn't changed. 6.5. Now we're seeing OKC again. You're laying a price on this neutral floor against a team that I'm confident will come with much better effort today than they did, certainly in the second half, than they did against Miami. So with all the issues on Denver, and Denver for me is a one-way team. I cannot bet on the Nuggets right now when your coach is telling me we don't care about winning these games. But off the no-effort second half against the Heat, getting called out by the coach, it's also not a game that I really want to bet against the Nuggets. So clear pass for this better. Again, this isn't a deep NBA card for me. All the next 2 games have piqued my interest.
All right, Teddy. And the next game up, and Paul, hopefully that answers your question there. And why is the Nuggets 6.5? But the next game up here, Teddy, we got. This is actually on ESPN, 6:30 Eastern, so 3:30 Pacific here. 236.5 being the total. That's the highest total on the board here. Memphis versus New Orleans on ESPN here. We got the Pelicans -4 in the hook, and of course 236.5 being the total. Teddy.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, yesterday we saw every game but one get to 228, 228, and we saw at the end of the day unders cashed at a higher rate than overs. Mm-hmm. So this being and this is the highest total on the board for good reason. I have no argument with anyone that wants to play the Pelicans over the total. The Pelicans have not seemingly improved their defensive acumen all that much during the break. They will push the pace at every opportunity on offense. Memphis certainly is not a team that is reluctant to push pace offensively either. I would not be surprised at all to see this game being played at a breakneck pace, which bodes well for over bettors. From a side standpoint, look, the Pelicans aren't playing defense, and they're laying 4.5, and it's every bit of a. I mean, Memphis is viewing this game with every bit as much import as New Orleans is. I understand the Grizz are on the second of back-to-backs, but I also understand that Memphis, they've been playing these barn burners, a pair of them already. Heck of a comeback yesterday. Sometimes when you come back in the closing seconds and then fall short at the end, you don't have that energy the next day. I didn't get that sense from any of the post-game quotes out of Memphis. And I use this as a free play for today. You can find the full analysis right now up at sportsmemo.com. I do like the Grizzlies plus the 4.5. I don't think we'll see a 5, and I wouldn't talk anyone out of playing this game over the total.
Teddy, do you think there's any kind of added tax here with Zion playing for the Pelicans? Do you think they're taxing that?
So again, and what I should have done, this is an opening line report. I should have my numbers here. My apologies. My numbers, Toronto, and I'm going to give you, let me start from the top. I have Toronto 3 over Miami, which is pretty much right where the number is, although we're seeing money come right now, literally as we speak. There's been a big steam move on Miami. The lineups are out. Let me see if that has something to do with the lineups. I'm not seeing it. All right. I don't know exactly why that moved. But anyhow, there's money coming in literally right now. I know that there was some questions about Bam Adebayo. He's expected to play. Maybe this line is the movement for Miami right now is based on that. But anyhow, my number was Toronto 3 over Miami. My base number was Indiana 4 over Washington. I subtracted 3 points from the Wizards, and I'm making the situational adjustments. The first back-to-back is significant. The first back-to-back off a barn burner yesterday is significant. I took 3 points of the Wiz. That made my number actually Indiana 7 over Washington. The number right now 8.5. My number was OKC 3 over Denver. And I thought situationally it could merit a play on the Nuggets. So really my number there is more like a 2, OKC over Denver. So from a pure powering standpoint, Denver might be the play in that one. This one, the whole reason you asked me about that was my number here. My powering number is Memphis -2. I put in 3 points for the Grizz to New Orleans with the Grizz with the Grizz on the back-to-back and New Orleans off a particularly poor performance, which sets the line up for, in my mind, that'd be New Orleans -1. We got 4.5 here. So from a line value standpoint, based on my numbers, there is some value on Denver and there is some value on Memphis.
Okay, Teddy, and our friend Jay Money is Money saying a huge bounce back spot for the Pelicans, but you read it more as a down performance, maybe carries over.
I don't know they're any good.
Okay.
Fair enough. That's the question with New Orleans right now. It's so clear after watching the first 4 days of the NBA. I want my money, especially with favorites. I want my money on teams that can get stops. And New Orleans is not one of those. I certainly haven't seen an indication that New Orleans' defensive acumen has improved in any real way. since the bad defense they were prior to the restart. So I understand that it's a in theory a Pelican spot. The Grizz are 0-2 coming out of the break too, and every quote I got out of them is they're just as hungry as New Orleans is. So like I said, I took the Grizz plus the points. It's a free play with full analysis right now at sportsmemo.com.
Check it out, sportsmemo.com. Teddy covers. He's got all his packages up there as well. NBA, MLB, check him out. NFL, not too far away, guys. Great source there at sportsmemo.com. Teddy, we got some questions here on YouTube and Twitter. Appreciate everybody chiming in here, guys. Let us know who you're betting and why, too. We'll get it out on the show. One thing here, Teddy, is first off, guys, the guy's asking about Utah, LA. It is every game on the board, so we will get to that. It's just the last game on today's board. Tomorrow's card, if you guys want to throw out any questions, we'll kind of single out each game depending what Teddy likes. But Jeff asking a question here off of Twitter. He's saying he agrees with you, Teddy. Memphis bounces back here. Sprinkle a little on the money line. Do you have any kind of little quips here for sports bettors out there when you're taking a dog? Would you?
Yes. That's a great point. Excellent question. First of all, thank you all for the questions. I appreciate it. Keep them coming. We'll answer as many as we can on the show for sure, but we really appreciate your participation. And I like the instant feedback. You guys tell me when I'm being an idiot and when I'm not. So I do appreciate that very much. Now I lost track of the question. What was the freaking question?
The question from Twitter, Jeff Bluff 73. Agree with Teddy. Memphis bounces back here and sprinkle a little on the money line. I was making a question out of that. Do you recommend
yes. The question is, when we're taking dogs, do we want the money line?
Mm-hmm.
I think so far since the restart, the team that has won has covered every game but one or two.
Wait, can you say that again?
Since the restart, the team that has won the game has covered the spread in every game. It might be, I'm trying to even think the two games. I know there was one. But basically the answer is pick the winner has been the answer so far. With any underdog you're playing, and it's your quest, and it's your personal choice to a risk-reward ratio. But with any underdog you're playing, you should have at least some percentage of your wager on the money line.
I like that. Yeah. That's great advice there. And especially since the restart, a change here, which we as sports bettors are always looking for. If it's just pick the winner, then yeah, Teddy, that really speaks towards sprinkling on the money line for the underdogs.
Absolutely. Whether it's a 10%, you want just a little bonus, whether you want to put a quarter of your wager, a third, a half, so you'll push if they don't win the game straight up. With my money line wagers, I tend to be a little bit more conservative when I'm playing both the side and the money line. It would normally be in the range for me, anywhere between, depending on the point spread and the money line, anywhere between 20% of my wager and a third would be on the money line.
All right, Teddy. Guys, follow him on Twitter at Teddy_covers. We got San Antonio at Philadelphia up next. 747-748, 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific tip, 227 being about the prevailing total here, 6.5 or 7. That's what Philadelphia is laying in this one, Teddy.
So do you remember at the start of the restart and we're all going, yeah, well, that 22 straight seasons for San Antonio in the playoffs, that's about to end. Don't look now. The Spurs control their own destiny.
Might not end.
And it's not like anyone's going to look at Spurs-Lakers first round and go, oh, that's a terrible series. San Antonio is making some noise right now. They did their best to blow a big lead late yesterday against Memphis and hung on. They didn't hang on for the win. The Grizz hit a 3, a contested 3 to tie the game, and then DeRozan went down and got fouled and hit both free throws after missing a pair of free throws earlier in crunch time to leave the window open for the Grizzlies. But all the quotes I'm seeing out of San Antonio is, hey, we're confident, we're good, we're playing with heart. I understand. You do have definite concerns here, second night of back-to-back for San Antonio. They do still have a handful of key injuries, LaMarcus Aldridge not being one of them. Jacob Poeltl's playing really well. They didn't play their key guys massive minutes in yesterday's game, which could leave them relatively fresh here. The big question for this one is, what do we see from Philadelphia? Sixers led by doubles in the fourth quarter of their opener, and then they got bombed off the floor the rest of the way. And both ends they struggled. Defensively they had no answers whatsoever, and offensively, it was the experiment. And let's call it an experiment right now with Shake Milton at the 4, at the point, and Ben Simmons at the 4. That's a significant transition for what this team is doing or was doing during crunch time prior to the break. Philly's not a team I'm excited about laying points with right now. From a spot standpoint, and maybe it stands out, they're playing a team on the second of back-to-backs. Philly's coming off a loss, a poorly played loss, a loss which they gave it away. In theory, it's a Sixers spot, but flat out, Philly's not a team I'm excited about laying 7 tonight. If I'm getting involved in this game, it will not be on the favorite.
Teddy, when you say the word experiment in the NBA, I don't know. My first thought that comes to my head is just fade that. I just don't think the NBA is a good experiment league to be betting on. Any thoughts on that?
I don't disagree with that concept. But again, but on the other hand, teams can and do make transitions throughout the course of the season. And when you see a team, when the Rockets decided they were going to go true small ball, and then trade away their center, Capella, bye-bye, and let's go with a bunch of guys that are 6'7". And you say, all right, they're experimenting with this. That doesn't mean it's a straight bet against, because the rest of the league doesn't have a lot of film to break down to stop it. And of course, it creates some unique mismatch opportunities or matchup opportunities. This isn't exactly that, but in some sense it is. Philly is changing up the rotations. They're experimenting right now while they can in an effort to make the team better. Whether it pays off long-term or not, we'll have to find out. But the fact that they're doing stuff here during this portion of the season, it certainly sounds and feels like a bet against. I'm not going to disagree with that concept, but it's also something that NBA teams can and do over the course of the campaign, and sometimes it works out in surprising fashions against the point spread.
Okay, good stuff there, Teddy. We got $9 Monday, guys, at both Sports Memo and WagerTalk. Also, remember, tomorrow's $2 Tuesday. Teddy covers picks for MLB, NBA, both up there. Also, NFL right around the corner. Teddy, we got one more slot on tonight's slate, the degenerate special, so to speak. Last game on the card, 749, 750, LA Lakers, Utah Jazz, 217 being the total, seeing -6 or -6 in the hook. That's the Lakers laying in this one.
So the theory is elite teams off a loss. Lakers coming off a poorly played game in a lot of different ways. But LA too is a team that is transitioning. They're literally breaking in a new backcourt right now. And I understand that there's things to like about Alex Caruso, and there's things to like about there's things some like about J.R. Smith and the like. But it's a Lakers team of all the teams in the bubble, to think that the Lakers, there are no must wins right now for the Lakers. All right. This is definitely about a process of getting better over the next 8 years. These are like 8 preseason games for the Lakers. So I'm not getting that sense of urgency from LA right now that I am from some of the other teams. And in general, my thought process is that the teams at the bottom fighting to get in are going to be better bets than the teams at the top that are, and the Lakers have essentially cemented their playoff positioning already. Utah's had a lot of offensive struggles. I watched both their games pretty closely, and the Jazz, the offensive flow hasn't been there at any point for any extended stretch. Don't know that gets better against the Lakers defense. And certainly from a total standpoint, again, this one opened in the 219 range. It's bet down to 217, 217 and a half. And I wouldn't argue with that assessment. Both of these teams well above average when it comes to defensive acumen during crunch time.
Teddy, so it sounds like it points towards the under. We've seen a move here towards the under. Lakers off of a loss. Someone in the chat box was saying, they tend to go under. You would agree with that move for the degenerate special?
Absolutely. If I'm playing that game, I'm looking at the under.
Okay. All right, Teddy. Do you have we've had some guys asking safest bet on the card. Do you have a best bet for the opening line report on today's card?
So that's a question I honestly don't understand. And I hear it all the time. What's the safest bet?
Mm-hmm.
The safest bet is probably the biggest favorite on the money line, but it's not the safest bet because they could lose and then you're down $3,
Oh, yeah.
So I when I'm making bets, I'm not looking for the safest bet. I'm looking for where am I going to get the best potential return on investment. So again, the free play today is Memphis plus the points against New Orleans. I think they're going to hang in that game. I think they're going to hang right through the buzzer. I would take Memphis plus 4.5 and they take a little taste of the money line. But I don't know that's any safer than any other bet on the board. It's a question I honestly don't understand it. And I get that question a lot. So if someone could explain why someone says what's the safest bet as opposed to what's the best bet. There are no safe bets. The safe bets are in theory favorites on the money line. And that, what we call the guys that bet favorites on the money line bridge jumpers because the day, it works for a while. But the day that it crashes and burns is a very ugly day.
Okay. And I don't know. I was just kind of reading off the chat box here.
Yeah, I'm not angry about it. I don't understand it. Because I get that question a lot. A surprisingly amount a lot, and I really don't know what a safe. There are no safe bets. We're risking. We're risking to win.
Okay. He's also calling me the wrong name, so I should probably stop reading his questions on the chat box. But Teddy, we got anyway, we'll just go on to the Tuesday.
No, it's fine. I don't mind. The questions are good. Even if he calls you the wrong name, I call you the wrong name half the time. Isn't that right, Billy?
Yeah. Sure, Theodore. Sure.
Yeah. That's a South Park reference. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah. Over my head, man.
Yeah,
but we got Tuesday's card coming up. Did you want to hit all of these? Do you want to just?
I figured I got my numbers ready for Tuesday, so I figured I'll just give you. People may or may not be interested in what my numbers are, but I have them ready, so we can just do a rundown, and I'll give you what my short list is.
Okay.
What I'm hoping to see, and if I get this number, I'll do this. So let's run through it.
Okay, we got first up here, 1:30 Eastern. So a morning tip here on the Pacific Coast, 751-752, Brooklyn, Milwaukee. What are you thinking for first look here, Teddy?
So my number's 10 on the game, the first double-digit point spread of the bubble, and I'm really interested to see where it comes out. If they're gonna shade down, if they're gonna shade up. It is the Bucks off a loss. Milwaukee's been pretty good in that role. It is the Bucks off a loss in which they led by 8 with 3 minutes to play, and then did not play well down the stretch on either end, unfortunately for my part. But Brooklyn has a lot of guys who are getting minutes who are D-League type players, but during crunch time, and we saw it very clearly, yesterday. We have Jared Allen and we have Joe Harris, when you have Allen and Harris, and I'm by my space. It's embarrassing. I'm spacing on the third guy who I was thinking of. LeVert, of course, who was the difference maker in that ball game for that. But the point is, they've got go-to guys during crunch time that may make them live in games like this one. But again, my number's 10. Let's see what the markets do. It in theory might be a nice bounce back spot for Milwaukee.
Okay. Dallas, Sacramento, 753-754, 2:30 Eastern tip, Teddy.
Yeah, my number here is Dallas 6 over Sac, though. And there's nothing to like about the Kings in their first 2 games back. And there's nothing to like about the comments out of Sacramento following the first 2 games back. They've dug themselves a hole. And there's nothing to like about what Luke Walton has been able to accomplish. And you have a Mavs team that has blown leads and lost games in each of their first 2. They may be taking this game rather seriously. Unfortunately, my powering number might be low. I would expect this number might come a notch or 2 higher, but my number's 6 on it. And if I see 7 or less, I'm confident Dallas will be on my short list.
All right, Teddy, we got Phoenix, LA Clippers up next, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific tip.
My number's short on this was Clips 5 over the Suns, and I think it'll come a little bit higher, but Let's start with this. There's nothing not to like about what we've seen from Phoenix in their first 2 games back. Both games, the Suns have shown the ability to take a punch. We've seen the Suns distribute the basketball very well. They've looked surprisingly good, and they're not a team I'm in a rush to stand in front of. Clips are coming off a game in which they were draining every three that they set a record for threes. They were hitting shots against New Orleans. They might hit shots here. My number's fairly short on this. I think it'll come a little bit higher, but my power rating number is 5. And if I'm going to get involved in the game, it may well be on a let's bet on the Suns. I don't see myself laying with LA in that context.
Yeah, seems like a pretty good profile to be going with the dog in that one. We got 757, 758, Orlando, Indiana, 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific tip, Teddy.
Yeah, my true powering number on this one, the Magic have looked really good their first 2 games, but they've had matchups that worked in their favor, and they've hit a whole bunch of shots. Here they're playing a team that plays defense. My number's Orlando 2.5. That's because Indiana's playing on the second of back-to-backs. And let me talk about that for a minute, because at the beginning of the regular season, I never play a team on their first set of back-to-backs. They tend to be a step slow. I'm not convinced that's the case here in the bubble for this stage of their conditioning level. So I wouldn't say don't take Indiana just because it's second of back-to-backs, but let's see what the Pacers do in terms of minutes tonight. My number does have Orlando as short favorites, although I'm not convinced the number is going to come that high. I do think that if Indiana is tested in any way today, that Orlando comes, maybe it'll be -1, but I do think they'll come as chalk if the Pacers play any kind of minutes.
Teddy, couple questions here before we finish out the Tuesday card. One from me, one from the chat. Orlando, we talked about it last Monday in the opening line report, getting ready for the bubble. And you did say there might be something there to the Magic playing in Orlando after the first weekend. Do you still agree with that? And have you changed your opinion here? It might not be a factor.
I mean, I don't think the Magic's success has been because they're playing in Orlando. I think the Magic's success so far has been they've gotten some good matchups, and they're hitting shots. We know this team can play defense. Mm-hmm. And what they've been able to do, even with Fournier struggling, and Fournier, of all the bad contracts, he's the one that they paid him a lot of money to be very mediocre. But it's a Magic team that, if there's a quantifiable edge playing in Orlando, it's a point or less. It's not a huge difference maker for the Magic.
Okay, and would you factor that with any other team? The location of this,
no.
Okay,
Orlando's
it's just
the
Magic
team
a little
that would have
bit.
that potential edge.
Okay. And we also have Juan in the chat box. Teddy, the short version. How do you get your initial power ratings?
I make them. I mean, my very first power ratings. I mean, if you're starting from scratch and trying to make NBA power ratings, this is what I would encourage you to do. I find 3 sets. You can certainly find a good set at the Gold Sheet. The Gold Sheet has great power rating numbers, and obviously they're free, and you can just go and get them. I find 3 sets of power ratings and kind of merge them into one, and then you start making adjustments. That's how you make power ratings. That's how I would start. Now, some people use a pure math formula, and I understand that. That's the way the betting markets have gone over the course of the last decade and a half, where the hard math dominates the point spreads. Mm-hmm. I don't adjust my power ratings that way intentionally, because I want differential between my numbers and the broader market numbers that are largely statistic based. So when you literally, when you start making point spreads, if it's day one, you find a couple of sets, you merge them together, you make sure that with the numbers you're seeing on the betting board that day, that they're close. They don't have to be every number's exactly right, but you don't want one game that's 8 points off. But if the numbers you're created from that little spreadsheet are relatively close to what you're seeing here, within a couple of points on every game, you say, all right, I got a decent starting point. Now let's make adjustments. And I make adjustments on my power ratings literally every night as I go through the box scores at the end of the game, and I go through the recaps at the end of the game. I'm adjusting my power ratings. Niche, half point here, point there. But they get adjusted every single night. That's something you have to do daily if you're going to be involved, making power ratings and making point spreads yourself on a daily basis. Excellent question.
Yeah, and Teddy, to add on to that, and some guys watch the shows and just bet just for fun, and that's fine. But if you're going to try to take this seriously, one of the things that I've learned, Teddy, in doing this as my straight job for 6 years now, is that's one of the things that can help you the most is before going and looking at what the spreads are the day before, 2 days before, whatever it may be, go down and make your numbers first. And then that's how I go in and bet the numbers. And if something is off by a large amount, go research it even more because you might have missed something, or heck, maybe you are seeing something, especially in some sports, more niche sports. The NBA is not one of these sports, but maybe in like small conference college football, college basketball, where you might actually be, an originator, know these teams and be a little bit ahead of the market and might be able to get an advantage that way. But what I was really trying to say is make your numbers before going in and looking at what the market has to say. Do you agree with that?
So that was the very first thing when I moved out to Las Vegas in 1998. I said, I'm going to become a professional bettor. Mm-hmm. I'm never going to have to work another job again in my life.
Yeah.
That was the very first thing that I set out to do, was start making numbers for every game. And that first fall that I was out here and learning how to make numbers in college and learning how to make numbers in the NFL, it's a process. You're not going to be great at it the first day, the first week, the first month. But that first year, I felt like I learned how to make numbers, and I've done it ever since. So for me, it's an integral part of my process. In most sports, there are some sports I don't worry about it as much. NBA is not one of those sports. NFL is not one of those sports. I want accurate numbers that I've made to compare against the market every time.
And guys, we're doing this as the NBA, every game on the board, but usually, during football season, this Monday show, we give out Teddy's opening lines in the opening line report for the NFL. That's how this kind of started here. And guys, we appreciate you joining us each and every Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, mostly doing that NFL, but heck, NBA has been fun and we appreciate you guys joining us. Teddy, just 3 games left here on the Tuesday card. Boston, Miami, 759, 760, 630 Eastern tip.
Where'd you get 3? I only got 2 left.
Oh, yep, you're right. Just 2 left.
I was going to say, there's 3. There's a writing game I don't know about, and there better not be writing games in the NBA right now. Writing games in MLB, all right, we'll deal with it.
It's probably coming. No?
No. There's a bubble. Okay, NBA's our hope right now. All right, I'm just going to leave it at that.
You don't think MLB makes it?
MLB's failures are making me increasingly concerned about the NFL this year. That's all I'm going to. I don't want to get too deep into it today, but I'm extremely concerned.
I'm concerned too, and I knew that going in.
Yeah. NBA's going strong. The time and effort and daily focus is there on NBA. And will continue to be there on NBA. And I'm working baseball. We don't know if baseball is gonna we'll see how this week goes. Baseball didn't die today. The original talk with baseball was going to die today, and it hasn't died today. So I'm not saying it's dead, but I have more confidence in the bubble right now than I do in anything outside the bubble. The NBA's in the bubble. I think we're going to get 2.5 months of basketball. Let's talk Boston and Miami. Again, the Heat are playing right now. They'll be on the second of back-to-backs. My straight powering number is only Boston -3, given the circumstance with the Heat coming off the back-to-backs. And how do we say this appropriately? With the Celtics coming off some concerning efforts, perhaps, might be the appropriate way to phrase it. And again, they played great yesterday for 2.5 quarters and then completely collapsed and then found a way. And boy, if you had Portland plus, you want to talk about a roller coaster with the craziness at the end of the game where he only hit 1 of the 2 free throws after the turnover. Oh, I mean, that was a sweat and a half. Doesn't matter what side you had, but the Celtics blew a 20-point lead in the last game out. They've had issues from the get-go. One would think, in theory, that this is the type of game that if they get a 20-point lead, they're more likely to hold it. But Miami's been real good at the comebacks. Again, my number here, Boston 6. That's a 3-point move with Miami on the second of back-to-backs. My party number only a pure 3.
All right, Teddy, and last game for the show, the nightcap tomorrow night, 761, 762, 9 p.m. Eastern tip, Houston, Portland.
So I got Houston 1 over Portland. I'll be really interested to see what that number is. And the Rockets, let's give the Rockets credit. I lost a bet on the Bucks yesterday. Houston played significantly better than I expected them to on both ends. All right. They had one of the nights where everybody was raining threes. It wasn't just Harden. I think 6 different guys hit at least 3 3-pointers in that game. So everyone was raining threes. And second game in a row that we've seen during crunch time, the Rockets play good defense, which is, and we saw it against Dallas and we saw it yesterday as well against Milwaukee. I don't know if the post-game quotes were real good for Houston, but on the other hand, it's a Blazers. Certainly when you talk about who's got more to play for right now, Portland does. Portland's played like they're hungry. And they're not a team that I'm in a rush to step in front of in this point spread range. From a short list standpoint, the Blazers are pass on tomorrow's game if it comes in the range that I think it will with Portland as short underdogs.
Teddy, great show, man. Hit both days, every game on the board. We have had a bunch of guys asking, what best bet for today. Lakers, Utah under. Can we go with that for the show?
Yeah, I mean, look, I gave out Memphis plus 4.5 as a free play. I have no problem with an under. Talking about recommending the under, recommending the Lakers and Jazz under the total. I don't love it, and I do have again. It's $9 Mondays. You can get my single best bet for $9 today right now over at sportsmemo.com.
Yeah, check them out. Sportsmemo.com, just $9 today, $9 Monday. Each and every play, by the way, guys. But Teddy's for sure. He's got the free play right up. Check it out there, sportsmemo.com. Guys, if you'd hit the like button on your way out, that does help us out. Leave any comments if you're watching on replay. At Teddy_covers on Twitter. I'm at Drew Martin Bets on Twitter. Love to hear any feedback, questions, anything like that. We'll answer it on the show. Teddy, anything you want to throw out there before we close this out?
I want to say thanks for watching. Enjoy the games, and good luck today.
All right. Best of luck, guys. Remember to wash your hands and cash those tickets.
Wash your